everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Graymond, and let's get to some questions. So the first question I have is a person's asking, well, how can I not be scared? And this is a question that is asked a lot, and I mean, it really affects everybody who has OCD. And the truth is, you're scared because you fear that the situation is true. And the reason why you fear the situation is true is because your brain is trying to make you believe it, because the brain has learned in the past that this was relevant because you were doing compulsions, whether mental or physical or whatever, or avoidance rituals. So if you listen to my earlier shows, you kind of can get what I'm talking about. But basically, the brain has learned that this situation is important to you because you're so much actively paying attention to it. So it's learned that it's important. Now it's sending you feelings of fear. And you're saying, how can I not be scared? Because you're getting the feelings of fear, but they're auto-generated by the brain. They don't actually hold a real value. It's like the brain believed something to be true, and then the person is reacting to it. It's just like, for example, remember when the whole 2012 thing was going on and some people were like building bunkers and shelters and all of this stuff, right? They believed something to be true. Whether it was true or not, obviously it wasn't, right? But they believed something to be true, and then they got into a huge amount of fear. Obviously, it's not the same thing as OCD, but it just shows you how the brain works. But to them, it was really real because they got so deeply involved in it. This is exactly the same thing that happens to a person who has OCD. That when the person gets focused on something and tries to dig deep, instead of getting better, they're getting worse because they're getting more emotionally involved. So when you are scared, right now at this point, when you are scared, it has to do with that programming that you put on the mind by paying a lot of attention to the situation. It's in the past. It's happening to you because of the past. It has nothing to do with what's happening now. And because it has nothing to do with what's happening now, you have to disregard the fear. So yes, the fear comes to you, right? When you think of the situation, or the situation comes back in your mind, on the front of your mind kind of idea, and you get scared kind of all over again almost, right? So, or you can just have this fear continuously throughout the day. But this is fear based on the fact that your brain learned that the situation is scary before. It doesn't mean that it's true. Just because you're getting the fear, it doesn't mean that it's true. So you do have to find it within yourself to, as much as possible, disregard it. And this is not an all or nothing situation. It's not like either you can disregard it or you can't. If you disregard it at least a little bit, that shows to your mind that at least a little bit you're not scared. Your mind it doesn't understand the meaning behind this thought and all of this stuff. It only understands it as a signal. For some reason, you are reacting to a certain type of signal. You're not reacting to others, but some reason you're reacting to this. So mind says, okay, I'll send you more of this one so you can protect yourself. Now you're saying, I'm going to choose not to react. I'm going to choose not to pay attention. The mind says that, sees that, and says, okay, you're choosing not to react, I'll send less of it. Fine. It's a very simple mechanism when you get down to it. All the mind wants is to try to protect you from danger. If it sees that you are saying that there is no more danger here, it's not going to protect you from something that doesn't need protection from. So as soon as it sees that you're not paying attention, it's going to start to loosen that grip. Now, it's not going to go away all at once. And I go into it in my other shows as well. It's kind of hard to describe everything in a quick show. You can look at my earlier videos for details on that. But basically, the mind, because it's a physical thing, right? It learned a certain pattern, so it's going to take a little bit of time to undo. So you can't expect it to go away, instantly. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's not going to take that much time. So you just have to keep strong, and it doesn't matter if it's not, if you don't feel better right away. It takes time, but I would say, if you're disregarding the fear, disregarding the feelings, disregarding the emotions, even sometimes, in case of some types of OCD, disregarding physical symptoms, people are known to have all kinds of physical symptoms that happen because of their OCD stuff. And the ones who haven't know what I'm talking about. So you have to disregard all of these things, and as you disregard them, you will see that they're dropping away because there's no validity to them, you know? So it's just the mind sending the wrong signal back to you, and as you disregard, you'll see that it's going away because there's just nothing there. So I hope this kind of helps, and it is a difficult road, and I know it's hard to just say, well, just disregard, but really this is the only thing that will help. The medication will not help. I mean, it will mask the symptoms, but it won't help in terms of actual real recovery. You know, it's the only thing that really does work is this thing, and that's why, I talk about it, because it really, I mean, lots of my clients are a proof of that. I am a proof of that. It works, but it won't work without your continuous effort. And when you have OCD, you put a lot of effort into getting reassurance and avoidance and all of that. If you just take that same effort and put it into refusing, you will see results, I guarantee it. So, and I see here you also asked about the false memory spectrum when it comes to the being scared. False memory is not any different than any other type of OCD. It's always like, well, what if something happened in the past? Well, what if I did something wrong? What if I don't know, whatever, right? What if I'm a bad person? Well, what if it comes back to bite me, in the future? And then if I disregard it, and then what if it turns out to be true? All of these things are what if. So they're not real. And like I tell you, millions of people are dealing with the exact same thoughts. When I talk to people who have OCD, there's not this great variations of types of OCD. They're all very, very similar, and people are always worried about pretty much similar things. So there's nothing unique here. The way you're suffering, the feelings that you are getting, the emotions that you are getting with false memory OCD, it's all the same as everybody else. You just have to disregard, and it's going to go away. Because right now it can't stay alive on its own. It can only stay alive if you're giving it power. And by allowing yourself to be scared, you are continuously giving it power. So in terms of false memories, so the thought comes to you, oh my God, what if something happened? You get scared. Instead, what you can do is, oh my God, what if something happened? That thought comes to you. You have no control over it. It's past programming, right? So that's fine. But you choose not to get scared. I don't care. I understand that I have this thought, but I'm choosing not to get scared because I know millions of other people are having this thought, and yet nobody has done anything. So standing up to OCD, not allowing it to beat you. It's very, very important, and the more you do it, the more you will see that you are improving, and you will see that these fears lose power. That's why you're having this specific thought and not any other thought, because you're paying attention to this one, and if you had other types of OCD before, those ones are no longer important to you, but in the moment they were important, just like this one, well, not exactly, maybe just like this one. Some are more, some are less. It just depends how it affects you, really. But it's your attention. You took attention away from other stuff onto this, and this is why your brain is sending it. You have to see at this point, because the brain has been programmed to take this seriously, it can't break that programming. You have to break it. It can't do it on its own. So I'm always, as you guys know, I'm always available. Like you can contact me through youhaveocd.com, info@youhaveocd.com, or visit the website. There's, my recovery program is there, my books are there, so you can all check that out. But I can support you, but you have to do it. Do you know what I mean? I'm here to help, but you are the one who's powering it up. As soon as you stop powering it up, this thought goes away. Do you know what I mean? So, well, kind of as soon. The brain does need some, like I said, like it needs some physical time to readjust, but it will start to get lighter, So I hope this helps. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Okay, so the next question has to deal with more physical obsessions. The person's asking how to deal with a pure O obsession, but it's also a physical compulsion of touching the hand. So I'm not going to read the whole situation, but basically it's a physical compulsion of touching a hand. So with this, what you want to do is you want to at least try to cut it down. And this goes for all compulsions, guys. So if you have a compulsion and you don't know how to beat it, basically you need to start at least cutting it down. So for example, you're washing your hands for 20 minutes, you start to wash for 15. You watch for 15 for a few weeks, or depends how strong the obsession is. Some people can go day to day to day. Some people need a week, so it depends. But so, for example, count how many times you're touching your hand in the course of. If it's really bad, count how many times in an hour. If it's not so bad, then count how many in a day. So, but just have a starting count, and then see if you can beat that count by doing less the next day or the next hour. And keep cutting it down, because as you cut it down, the brain will adjust, and the brain will say, okay, so the person keeps cutting it down, yet nothing bad is happening, nothing's wrong, so I'm not going to pay that much attention to it. I'm not going to send it with as much fear. So that really will help you. So I would say just try to slowly phase out of it. Just like you slowly gained this compulsion before, by little it started to take over. Same thing as, you want to little by little make it go away. Okay, so the next question I have is about relationship OCD. So doubting the relationship, worrying about the relationship, and really focusing on it, and really driving yourself crazy with it, basically. Also things like harm thoughts and things like that as well. So basically, the more you're focused on especially when it comes to relationship OCD, the more you get focused on it, the more you start to worry, the more you start to doubt, the more you start to basically get unhappy about it, because you start to really focus on the little details. And just like with any other type of OCD, you're starting to see the trees, but you don't see the forest. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're really getting into too much of a detail on it, and it's not going to go away until you stop focusing on it. As soon as you stop focusing on it, it's going to go away. So whenever a thought about your relationship comes in, you have to say, this is my relationship OCD. I'm not dealing with this. I'm not looking at every little tiny detail. I'm happy in the relationship. That's it. I'm moving on. And the OCD will say, are you really happy? Well, So you have to say, I'm choosing to believe everything is fine. I'm moving on. When you put your foot down and say, I'm not dealing with this anymore, OCD has no power over you, because just like I said in the other questions, right, that you are powering it up. OCD can't power it up can't power itself up, it needs you. So as soon as you take away that power, it can't, it's just going to go away, and you'll feel about the relationship just like you would have felt without the OCD being in the way. Also, because you're focusing so much about the relationship, and you feel like, well, the worst thing is, what if I feel some sort of like a harm thought or whatever, or have some sort of a harm thought. It starts to kind of really try to get you to fear the situation again. So what you have to say is, I'm not paying attention to the relationship worries. I'm not paying attention to the harm stuff. I'm just not paying attention to it. No one who has harm OCD has ever harmed anybody, okay? And the reason why that is because that is the opposite of what you want to do. That's why you fear it. People who are bad people, they don't fear it because they just don't fear it. That's what makes them bad people. They don't have a problem with that. You are worried about it, and that makes you a good person. But it just, when you're spending so much time worried about it, it starts an OCD. So it's like it's like overthinking about a negative situation, right? Like in terms of like a harm thought, right? Like a normal person who doesn't have OCD, not that anybody's really normal, right? But person who doesn't have OCD, they would say, who cares? I just had a harm thought, whatever. Like, they wouldn't pay attention to it. But a person with OCD, because of how good and how most people with OCD have very high morals, I find, generally. So they just can't stand the fact that they would even have this thought, and that makes them focus on this thought and makes the thought come back because they're so focused on it. So you just have to let go and say, you know what? There's no validity to it. I'm not putting my attention to it. You take the attention away, these thoughts will go away, your relationship will not bother you any longer, everything will be fine. But you have to control where your attention is. And if you have this thought come back to you, say, a million times a day, A million times a day, you have to divert your attention to another topic. It doesn't matter how many times, every single time, like a job, you just have to keep moving your attention, you know? It's like, think of your attention as a stream, like a stream of water, right? It's like, it's going in one spot, you have to divert it again. It's going in one spot again, you have to divert it again. Like when you're holding a hose, if you forget that you're holding it, it might, like, you know, tilt a little bit. You tilt it back every single time, and then your brain will learn. So then that's how it learns, because your brain can only learn by repetition. So just doing it once is not enough. You won't see progress from just one time fixing the situation and reacting correctly. You have to do it multiple times, and you will see that, and then you will react correctly. Okay, so the next question I have is also about harm OCD. And the question is, to what extent the acceptance can go? I understand you mentioned we can try to accept the consequence, worst case scenario, of what may happen if we don't do certain compulsion, for example, driving. Is there a limit to the type of terrible thought that a person can accept? For example, doing something in terms of like harm OCD. So with that, what I'm saying is, you have to, you don't have to accept like the thought, like being, like doing something terrible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to accept that you have OCD and you are having these thoughts, you know? Accepting the thought, like, I don't really know how a person would accept it, and I don't know if I've ever said that, to accept the thought, because it really, to be honest with you, I don't really see it working, you know, in terms of, if I said it, I don't really think so. Maybe I said in like one of my very early videos. I don't think it would work to just accept the thought, because you are a good person. That's why you cannot accept it. You can't change yourself, and you shouldn't change yourself, obviously, right? So you shouldn't accept the bad thought that you're having. You should accept the bad thought as OCD. Do you see the difference there? That basically you're saying, I'm choosing to think that this is OCD because I know a lot of people have the exact same thoughts, and none of it has ever come true. So I'm accepting that this thought is OCD. You're not accepting that, you know, the worst case scenario, because that's almost like seeking reassurance, because you're saying, well, it's not going to be so bad in jail, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like trying to kind of reassure yourself that it's going to be fine, right? But instead, you're saying that I accept that this is OCD. And not just accept, but I choose to accept that this is OCD. I'm choosing not to pay attention to it. And if it comes true, then I'll know that it's not. But so far, it hasn't come true for anybody on planet Earth. For anybody, it has not come true. So if I'm that first person, very special person, then so be it, then I'll deal with it. But, you know, but that's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to choose to spend my life in fear for some thought that randomly came into my mind and got stuck. So that's what I mean by the acceptance. And in terms of how far you can go with accepting it as being OCD, and depending on how bad the thoughts are, any kind of thought, doesn't really matter how bad it is. Because, I mean, especially in today's world, like I find a lot of people get shocked by watching the news or watching a show or a movie or something like that. You know, all of this can get very graphic. And for somebody who's sensitive, and people with OCD tend to be very sensitive, it can trigger them. Also, what you were saying about the sister, right? That if you are very attached to your sister, if you care about her, or generally any family member, you can easily have harm thoughts about them, you know, or harm false memory thoughts and whatever. You know, I'm just telling you that people who actually do it never view it as OCD, you know. So if you're viewing it as OCD, meaning that you're doubting it and all of this stuff, what if? You're saying, well, what if it happened? Well, how can I, if I don't know 100%? Well, people who do it know 100%. They don't doubt it as OCD ever, you know? So it's one of those things that, you know, if you're doubting it, if you're even on this channel, that already tells you that this is OCD. Because you wouldn't be on this channel if it wasn't OCD. So that's why, like, I'm very comfortable telling you that this is OCD thought, because first of all, I have a lot of experience talking to people about harm OCD, and it's never ever true. You know, it's always OCD. So You have to say every time, I'm choosing to only see it as an OCD thought. I'm not going to pay attention. As you do this, just like I said in the other questions, you guys can see how all of this is very similar. It's the more you say it, the less you will feel that it's true. Because it's always, I find that most of the time people say, well, but I feel like it's true, right? It's like what do you call it? Like the golden phrase of OCD. But I feel like it's true, and that's how I was like thinking when I had OCD as well. Logically, I know that it's probably not likely to be true, but I feel like it's true. Well, why am I having these feelings? Why am I having this fear if it's not true? And the simple reason is because that's how OCD operates, and that's how it kind of that's how your mind tricks you into believing it. If you didn't have the fear and you didn't have the feelings, you would never think it was true. You know what I mean? Like you would never even consider it, right? But because it gives you all of these feelings and emotions, you kind of start to worry and get deeper and deeper into it. But yeah, it's just honestly, it's just disregarding the situation, not accepting it. But just disregarding, saying, I'm choosing not to pay attention. I don't care. Basically, you want to, I would even say, go even further and say this to yourself. If the thought has to do with my sister, I am choosing not to pay attention to it. I don't care how it comes. I don't care what feelings it sends. I don't care what proof it gives me. I'm not paying attention. If it's to do with my sister, it's off limits. I'm not paying attention to it. And if you guys, like for everybody else, if you guys are having a thought that's about a specific situation, false memory happens a lot. If it has to do with this situation, I'm not paying attention to it. And you will see that not over a course of a day, but over a course of a week or 2 weeks, you will see how much lighter that thought will get if you just stay strong, and you have to be vigilant about it. So hour to hour, every time the thought comes in, nope, has to do with my sister, not paying attention. And just going on like that. You will see, because there's no truth to it, so it can't stick to you because there's no truth. So it can only stick by the feelings and by your attention. You take that away, it's gone. So I hope this makes sense to you. Try as much as you can to follow this. It's like I really feel bad for people suffering, especially remembering how much I suffered with this stuff. And it's just, it's really, once you get over it, you see how much time you wasted of your life worrying about something that's just silly, So it's like, really, really try to not buy into the feelings and the thoughts that it's sending, because it's really all a lie. So I hope this helps. Let's see if we have more questions here. Okay, so the next question I have is, I've noticed recently that saying to myself it's just OCD is subtly becoming a reassurance behavior. How do I deal with this? Yes, that can happen. So if you find that it's becoming reassurance, you want to make sure that you are not only talking the talk, but also walking the walk. Because why is it coming back again? That's the whole thing. So the thought comes to you, whatever it is. Then you say, it's just OCD. And what happens afterwards? The thought comes back again. You say, it's just OCD. But what are you doing after that? Are you saying it's just OCD and I am going to do what I want to do? Or you're saying it's just OCD, but you're saying it in that fear tone. You have to be more, like, say it with more strength, like not, oh, it's just OCD, I'm so scared. But saying it like, it's just OCD, I'm choosing not to pay attention, I'm stronger, and I'm moving on now, like that, like really giving it your power, even if you have to fake it, because you will have to fake it in the beginning. Everybody kind of does, right? But maybe because it's you can't really get around with not acknowledging that it is OCD. But I would say that for that type of thing, if you're already doing that part, maybe a good thing would be to do some exposures. So for example, you're saying, say if you have driving OCD, it's just OCD, I'm going to drive because I'm not going to be scared of driving. Or if it's cleaning OCD, it's just OCD, I'm not going to stop me from whatever, however you do the cleaning. Or for example, if it's say sexual OCD and you're afraid to be like one-on-one with the person or sitting close to a person, you say, I'm going to sit next to the person because there's nothing wrong, and there's no reason for me not to. Do you know what I mean? So like really doing an exposure and really pushing back and saying, you know what, I'm not dealing with it. So saying it's just OCD is great, and then afterwards doing an exposure. I would say that that would probably help you get over it in terms of the reassurance behavior. Because on its own, it kind of can become a reassurance. And unfortunately, there's no really way to get around it, because how else are you going to say it, right? Okay, so the next question says, I find it very difficult to believe that thoughts are just OCD and not a genuine problem, even though I know it's OCD. Do you have any tips for getting around this mind trick? And any tips on how to tolerate the doubt and uncertainty in, is every OCD thought a lie, untrue, or something that is not an issue? Yes, every OCD is a lie, untrue, and something that is not an issue. And in terms of that it is difficult to believe that the thoughts are just OCD, believing is not the word I would use. Yes, it is very difficult to believe because your brain is really programmed right now from the past about not believing it, right? So it's programmed to do the opposite. So to believe that it's OCD was probably going to be impossible. What you have to say is, I choose to view it as OCD. Because choosing doesn't require belief, choosing doesn't require trust, choosing doesn't require proof. You're just choosing it. And who cares about anything else? I'm just choosing not to view this as OCD. Once you start to do it that way, you will see that, in fact, yeah, you were right to choose it because it is OCD. You know, but that way you're kind of cutting out all reassurance because you no longer need reassurance. You're above it. You're saying, I don't care. I'm just choosing not to pay attention, you know? And you can back it up by saying, well, in the past, none of it was true for me. In the past, none of it was true for anyone else. So I'm choosing not to pay attention. And that's kind of the biggest tip I could probably give you. And the doubt and uncertainty, it comes from the old programming. It comes to you. It's not coming from you, you know? It's the brain sending you those feelings. You can amplify them by paying attention to them, but they're initially sent because the brain is in the wrong programming. Just keep kind of drumming the party line, as they say, right? I'm choosing not to pay attention. I'm moving on, and then do move on. And just like I said in the previous question, do something else, and then kind of to show it that you don't care. And as you do that, you will see that, oh, okay, you know, it's going down in intensity, meaning that, you know, there isn't anything there. So you kind of do get reassurance in the end anyways, but just not right away. And those feelings of doubt will start to diminish because your brain sees that, okay, there's nothing here. So the last question I have, or I believe that's the last question anyway, is the question is it possible to lose immediately the fear for my themes? Because I think this is why I can't get rid of my themes. So I think what the person is trying to say is the person will have one thought, then it gets switched to another thought and another thought throughout the day. The reason this happens often, basically, the faster these thoughts switch, the less severe OCD you have. So it's a good thing that they're switching because that means that none of them are staying and taking hold. More severe OCD would be just the one thought and it sticks around. Less severe, it's like that means just they don't have that much power over you yet. Right? So you want to make sure that they don't get any more power over you. So that's fine. This is what happens. But what you have to say is, just like, I'm not going to list your themes that you said here, but this is my themes. If, just like I said in the last question, if it has to do with this, or this, I'm not paying attention to it. So, for example, a person who doesn't have OCD would also have a weird thought in their head, but their switching happens within seconds or even milliseconds. So they don't even really notice it and pay attention to it. They just had a weird thought, they moved on, right? Yours takes a little bit longer, but it's not taking days or weeks or months. So that's good. So what you have to do is now cut it down even further. So, okay, if I have a topic that or I have a thought on the theme or the topic of my themes that you mentioned, I am going to disregard it within the first 2 minutes, okay? And really trying to follow that through. So, 2 minutes passed, I'm not thinking about it anymore because it has to do with my topic. and cutting it down until it's not relevant. I think that what you're experiencing is normal, and it's actually very good in terms of OCD recovery because they're not that deep, because they're still switching. But see, this also shows that the brain doesn't really understand what kind of OCD you have, and it also doesn't understand the nature of the thought. Well, is this thought bad, or is that thought bad, or whatever? It only understands it as signals. So it just sends you the signal that you reacted most to. It doesn't really care what it is. So you reacted most to this, it sends you that again. And that's all really that it is. So anything that has to do with your themes, refuse the reaction and it will go away. Thanks everyone again for listening to the show today. If I missed any questions, which I could easily do because I'm having them coming from different areas, and sometimes the email kind of is hard to decipher which question is for show and which one is not. If I missed yours, please write me back and I will include it in next week's show, or if you can't wait, I'll just reply to you in the email. If you guys would need more information, you can visit youhaveocd.com. If you would like to start recovery program one-on-one with me, you can do so at youhaveocd.com as well. If you want to email me privately, you can always reach me at info@youhaveocd.com as well. Thank you guys so much for everything, and I'll see you in the next show.